My Family Thinks I'm Crazy, a podcast where I, your host, try to give you some tips on how you can explain all this weird, wild, crazy conspiracy stuff to the people you love most. Because that's what I've been trying to do for the past 10 years with no success.
I've been telling everybody that our government is shady, but every time I do, my family thinks I'm crazy. The hollow earth, UFOs, aliens invading, fluoride in the water, they swear skies daily. When I talk about these things, they think I'm crazy. There's no escaping anymore the evil that we're facing. Illuminati mind control, they're sacrificing babies. The end of days, but anyways, my family thinks I'm crazy.
What, they don't want to listen to you?
No, they don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. They're just like, oh, here we go, Mark. Off again with your...
Mark being Mark again.
Yeah. So, that's the thing about podcasts is when you're on the air, and it's like therapy, If I can't talk to my family about this stuff, I'll talk to you, Matt, and all our listeners.
You'll just tell your whole podcast.
Yeah. So who are we talking about today, Matt?
They think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. They really think that I'm crazy. My family thinks that I'm crazy.
What you're about to hear may shock and disturb you. Suspend all disbelief and open your mind. Step into the world of a 9-year-old boy whose soul is taken into the secret space program for 20 years, undergoing specialized training scenarios, fighting battles on other planets, and even mating with extraterrestrial women. Then, this 29-year-old's conscious mind is, in the blink of an eye, returned to his former 9-year-old body, with only seconds passing in our Earth time. Here to share this story with us today is Mike Viejas, Beyond Top Secret Texan. I'm Mystic Mark, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast.
During a MyLab, which is a human-run abduction experience. Basically, an alien abduction experience in every single parameter, but it's humans who, in this case, working for the Navy, running through Solar Warden, that abducted me. At the time, the experience of the 20-year in back, and then the return, it's indescribable as living an entire lifetime and then being returned to the biologically mental capabilities of a 9-year-old child. We can all become a space power and have individually UFOs, basically individual spaceships with the technology as it is now. Like Han Solo in the fucking Millennium Falcon, you could just have the keys to it and be like, boom. And it isn't a big deal. It's not. We've been convinced it's at this advanced limit of our abilities, but it's not. It's just one of the many things we can do. And I'm saying, we can make this world so good you wouldn't want to leave. We can make this world so good you wouldn't have to leave. Like the idea that we're doing the world, we can cancel the apocalypse. It is the absolute expression of some kind of quantum intelligent force. And like you said, that just like how we view animals and we think life is cruel, but that's nature. And then that is absolutely the same governing principle between us and the most advanced Kardashev 4 civilization that can power a civilization of trillions upon trillions across entire arms of the galaxy. And it's still run by the same impulse of existence, the same observational reality that governs your momentary actions with yourself, with your family, with your society. And it's very much that we share that one spirit. And I feel like that's a big part of ufology. That's a big part of this experience too. My persona is Beyond Top Secret Texan to run the Beyond Top Secret Texan podcast. My real name is Michael Viejas. It's not, hard. It's on the same page. It's just kind of Beyond Top Secret Texan, right into Michael Viejas.
full name too, so it's not even hard to look me up. So it's not like a big deal. But yeah, beyond topic, you can call me Michael if you want to do the interview. Whatever you exactly. So my journey to becoming a podcaster, to becoming what this channel is, was first to make YouTube videos and to enter the journey of self-expression and kind of getting out as a form of therapy what I was already on the journey of remembering and experiencing as a contactee and lifelong abductee. And what I mean by that, I mean a survivor of the 20 and back SSP, which is reported, yes, in a very small population of, survivors and ufologists, but still a growing and ever more vocal, coherently vocal population of people who have memories or are gaining memories of involvements in top secret space programs and secret societies that utilize extraterrestrial technologies as well as assistance in various capacities, spiritual. What we would know as spiritual is really just a higher form of technology. What we know as, say, reverse engineering is sometimes even given technology through treaties that certain groups have made with extraterrestrials and ultra-terrestrial populations of terrestrially Terran Earthlings, but they are coexisting / competing with humanity in these very intricate power systems and structures. But as a survivor and having these memories, had to get them out or I was going to go crazy. So we started the journey on YouTube, but then immediately hit the censorship wall. And while fighting censorship over the last 2 years, have created this effective way of telling these stories. And it's not stories, these truths, which are the episodes, the podcast format. I found that being the best because you can't do as much in depth on YouTube. They want like 10-minute. I'd say by perfecting the media of being a public speaker, of learning how this community worked, the ufology community, what it needed, what it lacked, who was controlling it, how the forces worked. After getting basically into it for the last 2 years, I have become the Beyond Top Secret Texan podcast, the host, Michael Villegas, and exactly through interviewing other creators and specialists have kind of been able to keep myself a real human being who is currently still alive and thriving and living and learning and experiencing life, and as always a student, but also can confidently say I'm a master of what I am a master of. My own experiences have led me to see things at an elevated level than I would say the layman ufologist or, much definitely the skeptic. And so that's what I bring that's unique to the ufology field. What I would say is the Beyond Top Secret Texan experience, not only the podcast, which I guess that you've experienced. I try to bring not only my own information, but obscure, fringe, censored, controversial information that's not mainstream, that is absolutely not mainstream, and in fact in danger of being removed from the internet entirely in some cases. And this includes, recently I uploaded over 8 hours of James Casbolt, Sarah Rachel Adams, and Max Spears ufology presentations about the SSP and the super soldier programs that have been removed quite effectively from the surface web, and only using already saved information that I had from old hard drives and the Wayback Machine, Internet Archive, for example. Basically, a lot of Google foo that I'm able to bring a lot of these things. I publicly share videos or documentaries with less than 100 views. That YouTube, I know, is sitting on a razor's edge, and all they have to do is press delete, and then that's gone forever. That audiobook, that Manly P. Hall presentation, some kind of Gnostic information or occult and Vedic video, it's all in jeopardy. So we got to archive it. One pillar of the show. Second pillar, interviews with creators, interviews where they're interviewing me. I try to kind of keep this dialogue lively and alive. The third is my own presentation of my own experience, my own theories, very unique. And the fourth are the videos. I try to provide dark web videos. I try to provide the rarest, most obscure, and the best high definition, clear as crystal as I can get it. Basically, just the best videos, just the best video evidence of UFOs, cryptids, whatever I can find that challenges people, that basically makes you confront that these things are more than speculation, and dispel the myth that because we all have cell phones, that there are fewer videos available. And that's completely paradoxical to the truth. The fact is that more so than ever, we have high definition videos of UFOs. We have high definition videos of cryptids. We have high definition videos of things you would call spirits or ghosts. And this accounts for a mountain of evidence that is conveniently being ignored or passed over by the majority of paranormal investigators in the mainstream, because they want to keep you thinking there's one, maybe two videos a year that come out that, we can really be like, ooh, ah, about, like, ooh, that does kind of, ooh, we need to take, but it's only a very controlled amount, like gate-kept amount. And we really need to bring the power back to the people. And with things like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube for a long time, but I ceased uploading to YouTube and protest of their censorship. And I just cannot ethically produce content for them to feed the machine, even though that's where I get, majority of my content still from. Like, I still have to understand that that's an addiction. The YouTube machine has turned on the silent consumer, censored the creator, and choked the conversation when it comes to conspiracies from all spectrums of conspiracies. And even talking about certain things risks absolute deletion, and that's like 1984 Orwellian, like psycho. Like I'm saying, like YouTube is openly at war with anyone who disagrees with the narrative, and then at this point, I can't keep uploading content there. One, because it risks the channel being permanently deleted. It's already on a razor's edge. And second of all, like, why would I ever add a single second of content that would promote your advertising or that you can use to keep in your archives? Like, see, we have to start going third party. So I have like a library and an Odyssey account. I have like things that, like I said, the TikTok is a good way of finding these videos. But yeah, I still have like 500 YouTube videos. I still have like, over 500 YouTube videos. Like, I still have those videos out there for everyone to see. And if you join the Patreon and sign up for membership and things like that for my podcast, you get the exclusive, uncensored, highly controversial. Like, I mean, like, where there's things that, yes, by all standards, nudity, sexual violence, things like that, which are discussed openly when dealing with conspiracies, secret societies, the secret space program. On my program, I know for a fact they're taboo. They cannot be talked about. As well as things about the UFO reality that go counter narrative to the mainstream, which would, be very controversial, like human mutilations when it comes to alien abductions, human mutilations, human fatalities, humans being killed in these close encounters are being severely, attacked or wounded, mutilated, given diseases like cancers, rapid-forming cancers, etc., as well as the just basically total control over society that these secret space programs and the societies that operate, the extraterrestrials from the very top down, have on society. So I have to keep that behind the paywall. But say, for example, if you join the Patreon, which I offer, it's already been taken down once. This is the kind of information that, no, it is actively being censored, actively being shut down, shadow banned on every single platform. So if you have to search, I understand you have to use direct links sometimes, and even then it's very difficult to find. They actually won't let you see my content sometimes. Like with the Patreon, they shut all that stuff down, so I had to build it back up. you'll get a link to my Dropbox, and a Dropbox is a personal folder where I keep all my evidence. So just for the minimum donation of the Patreon, you can get access to my personal research folders. I'm very open with my information. You can join my Telegram group. Just look it up, Beyond Top Secret Texan on the Telegram. Find personal videos, archived UFO videos, high definition. Everything I watch, you watch. It's linked up that way. Whatever I'm clicking, it's immediately sharing straight to that Telegram chat. So you basically are seeing through my eyes as I'm researching. And, you know, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to do, is provide as much open source evidence for other researchers, as well as providing a very mature conversation about these things that I think that the community really deserves and hasn't really ever had.
I hear you, man. And wow.
Maybe Bill Cooper, Alex Collier, definitely. Alex Collier in his later days was very much like my big inspiration now.
Well, let's go back to the beginning, because you gave us a lot of information there, and that's a hell of a summary, and I definitely hope folks go and follow up with all of that. I will put links in the description of this episode, so it'll be very easy, hopefully not difficult at all for people to go and subscribe. But let's go back to when this started for you, because I've heard similar experiences in many different ways. But was there a moment in your childhood where there was maybe missing time, or is this something that came to you in your older teenage or adulthood where you started to have these sort of memories that would come back? Is that true to your story, or is that just a stereotype for these sorts of things?
No, my story begins when I was 9 years old during a MyLab, which is a human-run abduction experience. Basically, an alien abduction experience in every single parameter, but it's humans who, in this case, working for the Navy, running through Solar Warden, that abducted me. At the time, the experience of the 20-year in back, and then the return, it's indescribable as living an entire lifetime and then being returned to the biologically mental capabilities of a 9-year-old child, and having the effective memory wiping that they already do through chemical anesthesia and basically a lot of ultrasound surgery into the mind itself. But so you are effectively memory wiped as they have taken you from your timeline, let you live 20 years, basically in an outside time deviation, and then returned you to that moment where they took me, and then returned me into my very bed moments after this had occurred. Age regressed back to my 9-year-old form, and there is some discussion between survivors who have gone through this experience, whether or not they just clone you when you're 9, and then take that clone and let it age and then transfer your personality back into your original body, or just kill the clone and thus you just wake up afterwards in your original body. And there's a lot of discussion how this physically happens. That's the conversations that I am currently having with the community, trying to find the truth of this, but that happens a lot, where 20-year and back experience is a human-run program. Extraterrestrials might be involved, like the Greys, or say the reptilians, very commonly reported various alien encounters. Mine were the Venusians of the Ashtar High Command. But exactly, when I was returned, this felt like an amazing dream. This felt like an experience which I couldn't quite understand or experience. So I had the memory my entire life, but had to live and ultimately suppressed all of these UFO sightings, or what I would now know as abductions or repeat abduction experiences, sleep paralysis, bright lights, missing time, waking up in strange places, seizures later on in life. But even then joining the military and the Navy, and then going to school in a very acclaimed university, full paid scholarships, which is a very indicative of a government type oversight, where they're grooming you or handling you as if though it's also part of a reward system for these various involvements, right? So I was a very regular person, very in the system person, very agnostic, very open-minded, very weird, but always very eccentric, but brilliant. Graduated college within 4 years, full paid scholarship. I then joined the military and became an aviation electrician, worked on F-18s for 4 years. I'm not someone who's prone to delusions or fantasies, or someone who would be in the situation where I currently am, having been forsaken and basically exiled by that mainstream community for endorsing or exploring or even giving my endorsement to these things. Whether you say in public, I believe in UFOs, they think you're from, Mars, exactly. If you want to bring up the reality of things, I was a salesman for almost 10 years. I made $50,000 a year just on commissions, and I gave up all of that to pursue full-time UFO truth and research. And most of that was because when I couldn't keep silent about it, and so I'd be talking about, hey, do you guys believe in UFO? Have you ever seen a UFO type thing like that? And I became known very fast as the UFO guy, as the Fox Mulder type, the spooky guy. And that basically made me see that society, one, needs people to bite the bullet, and because it is a sacrifice, and follow their passions when it comes to this kind of subject matter, when it comes to truth, but also that, yes, definite pushback, definite conspiracy of silence, definitely conspiracy of us versus them, of the normalcy of conditioning, of hypnotic suggestion in society, the MK Ultra and TV. All people have opinions, and they use the worst in human nature to enforce these shame codes and these weird mind matrix prisons. That's what I'm saying. You can't be like I was, a salesman for all my sons moving in storage, while in your mind you're liberate yourself from mental slavery. You see it's all chasing money, it's telling you to shut up and just go back to work and keep your head down and don't look up. That's the dawning moment, it came in 2017 when I was trying to bring up this skyquake phenomenon to one of my coworkers. And no matter how much I try to explain this and show them YouTube videos, and it's just a simple phenomenon of unexplained thunder and roars or horns coming from nowhere. That was a big phase back then, when there was just hundreds of these sightings all over the world. They were on the news, and and I was like, hey, have you heard about this? And I was showing them YouTube videos, and they just it's like they couldn't care less. And I was like, this is not the future. This is the dark ages. This is living in a world where people are intentionally ignorant to all extraordinary things. So when I was personally doubting and afraid of being maybe I didn't get abducted, maybe it's all sleep paralysis. The skepticism was I realized I had to be reborn again. I'm not so serious about it, but yeah, I had to become Batman, vengeance, and I had to become a knight. No, you have to kind of assume this persona, which is beyond top secret Texan. You can't do it half-ass. You can't do it, you have to commit. You have to be no, I'm needed in the world. The bat signal shines. Yes, wherever there's UFO experiences, I'll be there. And no, you have to kind of do the Gnostic alchemical self-transformation and become your own legend. And it cost me all my career, my savings, my relationship at the time, and all that, because I was just too weird for everybody. I became ungovernable. I became unable to be compartmentalized or defined by Trump supporter or liberal or things that they want to always keep people talking about. This transcends it. UFOs, aliens, the secret space program. When you spotlight the truth, that's a conversation people are they literally cannot see the big picture. They literally are blind to the world that they are living in. But yeah, that's basically how I got here. And it was a lifelong journey. I'm 35 years old right now, and it was a long journey. And I look coast to coast AM helped me out a lot. Like I said, the speakers like Bill Cooper, like his Mystery Babylon series, that was incredible. Like I said, like having YouTube, having avenues to be able to binge and explore and educate myself really helped out, because there is no way, nothing in the system that can educate you appropriately enough or educate you enough to start making sense of these things. Basically, the only framework is spirituality and the occult. For those who aren't, it's either or, but it's both. That it's science fiction. That's why I label my podcast science fiction, because fiction, it's that word science fiction, we think it means fake, but it means what's real. Like, you got to see the double speak. You got to use it and embrace it, because it really is that. Like, they say it's science fiction because that's science faction. That's the facts. It's like, that's the world that they use. That for you, it's science fiction. For them, it's real. And then you start thinking about, because I'm not dumb, or I'm the kind of person who really scholarly approaches things. I'm not just going to say something and not think about it. The phenomenology of what is real and what's not real has been absolutely controlled by the symbolists and language and magicians, the gematria and things like that, like the reverse speak in albums. Language is a very weird occult thing, and the way we think linguistically and mathematically, like that's the bars on the prison. That's the ones and zeros when the Matrix title screen is going up, and they even show you it's like Chinese letters and things like that, because everyone is in a cultural mind prison, and it's all based on languages. It's all based on things like calling them UFOs is a loaded and charged word. Calling them UAPs is also a loaded and charged word. People who call them either UFOs or UAPs are two different people, and they want to make as many small camps divided by as many small languages and like Tower of Babel type things, where mankind is kind of cast into confusion. When we start speaking all the same language, then we can all start seeing the world the same way and start working to one goal, which is basically getting out of here, furthering our progress. We can all become a space power and have individually UFOs, basically individual spaceships with the technology as it is now. Like Han Solo and the fucking Millennium Falcon, you could just have the keys to it and be like, boom. And it isn't a big deal. It's not. We've been convinced it's this advanced limit of our abilities, but it's not. It's just one of the many things we can do. And I'm saying, we can make this world so good you wouldn't want to leave. We can make this world so good you wouldn't have to leave. Like the idea of we're going to the world, we can they can cancel the apocalypse, we could correct the world, we could recreate it however we saw it fit, we could provide just almost, limitless amounts. It's post-scarcity. It's a post-scarcity reality. We're already at Kardashev 1. We just have to do it. We're being limited right now by these corporations, by these secret societies, by these very secret space programs at the behest of extraterrestrials. That is who's limiting us. That is who's really trying to keep the secret. And it kind of reinforced that point. The Israeli Space Force leader came out and disclosed the fact the Galactic Federation of Light's a real thing. All nations work for them and are operated by figures in their societal power, and they are the ones enforcing the code of secrecy, not any human power. Humans are just following the orders of secrecy. That is the idea that mankind is not in control of their destiny. That needs to be talked about. And whether or not this isn't a test, some kind of test to see if mankind is going to break their chains, is going to become, to become their own Prometheus, to steal the fire from the gods themselves. And if this is a physical manifestation of the alchemical transformation that became mankind's enlightenment, that began during the Gnostic quests of the very first, Archimedean, Greek, that kind of Atlantean type of brilliance or genius, that kind of genius loci.
Right.
You know, and that we're it's like we are, I don't know. We need to wake up. We're just sleepwalking. We're just sleepwalking, like as a society, as a people, as a species. And that it's not everyone. It's just billions of people are. And the truth is, hundreds of millions live off-world. Hundreds of millions of human beings live on the hollow earth. They live in different breakaway civilizations. And they view us the way we view, like, India. Like a third world, like we're like, man, they have to like poop in the street. That sucks. Like they don't even have toilets. Like, damn. We look at that and be like, how could a civilization be in the modern world and still be so racked with poverty and still be so backwards and like stricken by their superstitions and then locked in their ancient ways and traditions? Like when we look at this, like they have a caste system, man, that's crazy. Like, how are they conquered? They have 1 billion people. Oh, because they lack technology and modern war strategy. And like, that's how they, who are a smaller population, but are dominating us in every other aspect, look upon us as an overpopulated, yet in squalor, impoverished society. Oh, still likewise human beings, but just as foreign to us as, say, starving people in Liberia are to Americans. Like, culturally, we think, why do you guys live in a junkyard? Like, why a landfill? Like, you guys just live in, you all have AIDS? Like, you all have HIV? That sucks. Like, wow, like, you guys didn't figure out how to survive in the modern world? Like, clearly, you're the victims of somebody's exploitation. And, like, you're more pathetic than you are, equal to us. And this breakaway civilization who inhabits Mars, the moon, various extraterrestrially given craft that operate like flying cities, mothership space stations, these secret countries and locked away in the deep state government and things, they look upon the average day person in America, England, Europe, and China, first world people. They look upon them with that same perspective where they're like, man, you guys know nothing, and you guys are messing up all because of the lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge is letting you guys die with their life expectancy is so short. You guys are having preventable diseases like cancers. You guys are basically stuck in the Stone Ages. And they're not like, we don't intervene or help out as much as you think with these impoverished third world countries that have literally almost 1 billion people combined that make less than $1 a day. They don't intervene directly with us because the same thing, like just because it's your misfortune, none of my own. And that's the kind of brutal reality that like all extraterrestrials and all human beings, because it's the universal brutality, it's the universal kind of material 3D viciousness that we all like. Everyone has a Fibonacci sequence, and the Fibonacci sequence plays out in all things. And it's just like constant, universal, constant. The actions of intelligent beings, the progress of intelligent beings, and the populations, etc., out from the personal, from the micro, from the moment to the entire history of their existence, is not a mystery. It is the repetition. It is the absolute expression of some kind of quantum intelligent force. And like you said, that just like how we view animals and we think life is cruel, but that's nature. And then that is absolutely the same governing principle between us and the most advanced Kardashev 4 civilization that can power a civilization of trillions upon trillions across entire arms of the galaxy. And it's still run by the same impulse of existence, the same observational reality that governs your momentary actions with yourself, with your family, with your society. And it's like very much that we share that one spirit. And I feel like that's a big part of ufology. That's a big part of this experience too. And so, yeah, my perspective is very much unique in that angle. I try to connect a lot of dots. I try to work at it from a lot of angles.
Right. Wow. So take us back, if you will, because you really painted a picture there, and I understand this concept of non-intervention, and it is sort of unsympathetic seeming, like, oh, these, alien beings have all the power to save us, and they don't. They must be, being like tough parents on us, right? They expect us to, get out and make it on our own. But how much of this information that you've, displayed here, and obviously there's still so much more that that we haven't gotten into yet, how much of that comes from these memories that you're sort of, because if my understanding is correct, this experience happened, you go 20 years in the future, you come back at what seems like the same age, but there's this immense amount of time that's been spent in what to an earthling who's never left the earth in this way seems like maybe an hour or a day or even just a few mere seconds. Do you think like this extended time is where you learned a lot of this stuff? Is there sort of an education that's kind of like lying within the surface, and listening to Coast to Coast and things like that sort of remind you of these things? How does that work?
It reminded me, basically, like how you just described the end of it. The memory was suppressed through the sheer kind of pollution of day-to-day living when you're reliving your life, right? And I'm not above hypnosis. No one is. No one's above propaganda. No one's immune to that stuff. So over time, it's suppressed, and it's hopefully, and the whole Illuminati's operation with entertainment, mistaken or confused for entertainment, like Halo, Star Trek, Star Wars. Those things are intentionally filled with realistic and real kind of symbols and program names and things. There's shows like Fringe, X-Files. So, I'm having a sore throat. So, when people are trying to remember, like I was trying to remember, it becomes a battle with the self, an internal battle between what's real and what's not. Now, the thing is, people are not experts on the phenomenon of memory. Right, and you actually have to study and learn. And the way I started learning about this was studying MK Ultra, was studying the government's projects when it came to memory, falsification, the fugue state, the exploitation of the fugue state, things like scopolamine and drugs that would block memory, but also create a state of walking zombification and things like that. So as I was learning about this, I was going through self-induced and pioneered hypnosis, hemisync, a lot of sensory deprivation, deep meditation, like remote viewing, astral projection. I was really getting into that. And I started literally unlocking memories and unlocking things that I thought at the time were visions of a world that was happening, and I was having visions of it. This is in my late 20s, right? So I was already a Navy veteran. I had already been medically retired for having seizures after a very pronounced UFO contact, right? And I said, I have a lifelong experience. So a lot of these things were in conjunction with these real life UFO experiences, seeing UFOs in the sky clear as day, and that basically creating like the parallel two lives, which is this life, seeing UFOs, being in what people would call the secret societies, and as I people would openly call secret societies, Order of the Nine Angles, Knights of the Golden Circle. These are just a few of the groups that I don't like to advertise because they're so controversial, and the actions done I don't really you take responsibility for, because there's a lot of like into that when it comes to ritualized like hypnotic mind control, sleeper agent type shit. I think it's another world, right? But going into that, this doesn't make it, at this time, I was, able to accept that information. I'm able, then that's not the craziest fucking thing I've ever heard, that these programs exist, right? And I had been hearing through William Tompkins, Bill Tompkins, great discusser of that, like Carrie Cassidy's Camelot Project, the Basis program, Thomas Casbolt, Max Spears, and Sarah Rachel Adams. Specifically, those three speakers have produced the most influential, I think, in my opinion, the most influential confessions or like interviews, presentations of this information, of their personal experiences, right? And this was allowing me to come to terms with it and allow myself to remember what I had suppressed. Not forgotten completely, but suppressed. It's a completely different phenomenon. Like I said, many people are not experts on memories. There's a difference between amnesia and not having memories and suppressing memories, which a lot of people with PTSD, a lot of people with trauma can attest to. Very conventionally speaking, you wouldn't think it, but there have been people like Vietnam veterans or recent global war on terror veterans, which I am one, that have completely come out and changed the game when it comes to what PTSD can cause your mental states to believe happened or imagine, like what you can suppress. You would be surprised, and that includes killing human beings in combat, and you don't even remember doing it. Like things like, because you're on this instinctual autopilot, like, you know, out of body state, but the Akashic records hold those memories. And that was a big part of it too, looking into the Akashic records, learning how to access these things. But yeah, the information I have now, that I have learned now, doesn't all come from these experiences. Making sense of it does. Making sense of it, having those experiences, that's independent. At the time, the mental state that I was in, I compare now to slavery. I compare now to transhumanistic slavery, military indoctrination, like Starship Troopers. Like, and that's what Solar Warden really is. It's a cult based on knighthood that operates in elements and with advanced technologies that are in secret and completely above top secret. You know, there's a book called Beyond Top Secret, where I get the name of my podcast from, Beyond Top Secret, about a international space program that's beyond top secret because it uses reverse engineered extraterrestrial technology and the assistance of extraterrestrials in terms of science officers, you know, non-terrestrial pilots, things that have been, say, for example, found by Gary McKinnon during his hacking of NASA. The speakers, you know, I'll always talk about the underground bases. There are bases in the ocean where they run these facilities. There are networks of tunnels that span all across the world that connect these things, that the governments and the politics that are being told to people are all theater. And the truth is that society is basically being run by a very elite group. It's mostly automated through the use of supercomputers and the powers of bureaucracy to be able to distance themselves, basically being like written off by private industry a lot of times, by the truth that our society fundamentally is not what it looks like. It's a corporation. It's owned by the Rockefellers, who then are in trust with the Rothschilds, who have $800 trillion. They don't need a cent from you. That's the big thing. Our taxpayer dollars get funneled up, and it becomes this black budget thing. And we're going to find the paperwork, and it's $3 billion. We have $3 trillion. Where do they account? They don't need to have $800 trillion in private resources. None of this leaves the family. That's what I'm saying. Like, these families can literally operate like they have for thousands of years. If you're not a Habsburg by blood, you are not a part of the club, the Club of Rome, the 300. You know, whatever you want to call it, the Illuminati literally is a very, very, already at this point, not even probably purely human. Theoretically, there's been talking about the tall whites, that it's not run by humans, even at that element, not pure humans. The discussion of what means human starts becoming here, like the inclusion of cryptoterrestrials, other intelligent beings from other animal kingdoms, from other species that are as intelligent as human beings, with as powerful societies living on Earth, coexisting or competing and living amongst us. That's a big part of the secret going on right now, that humans are not the only game in town. We're not the only species that lives on Earth, and most of them are human. It's just different subspecies of humans, the same as ants. that ants have hundreds of thousands of different variations of ants, distinct enough to classify them as subspecies. They're not related. They can't breed. They have highly different evolutionary paths and niches and specializations and live in various geographies all around the world. They don't come into contact with each other. That's just the brilliance of life. But they are all genetically ants. They're all more commonly like close to each other than they are of any other thing. They are basically the same, 99.9% the same. But it's that 1% that makes them an entirely different species that may cannibalize other members of the human race, that may vampirize the other species of the human race, that may parasitize the other species of the human race. Just life cycles, variously controlled by Earth's own evolution. Like I said, the Fibonacci sequence of evolution. When has there ever been one of any species? Never. It's not the case. And the highly successful species, the more of those species there are. And that's just the type of thing where that's the information that I've gathered now in this timeline. Like I said, I was taken first when I was 9. I was taken to Solar Warden through the Navy, but when I was 9, I was basically tapped. I was volunteered against my will, but at the same time volunteered because I wanted to be, for an exchange program with the Ashtar High Command, and specifically the Venusians of the Ashtar High Command, and recruited, my memories are being 9, recruited to live in an academy on their ship, educated by their teachers in their ways to try to develop psychic skills across a multitude of intelligent species, that all juveniles that were raised in this academy until the age of 14. I was then forced to come back to Earth to help defend it when Earth's solar system was attacked by Orion Draco. I go in depth on episodes already talking about this. But this is the kind of summarized version of it. From 14 then to the age of 29, full-time service, various capacities, various duties, cross-trained. There are very few relatable type, this was what I did all the time, because it's just so varied, involving the occupation of Antarctica, helping fortify and secure that once the Orion Draco invaded Antarctica. There was Hollow Earth and combat with the Aztecs that lived down in Brazil, and these various catacombs and caverns. They live all across North America and the Western Hemisphere, these Aztec mines. There was underwater training and a lot of submersible type training and diving, deep sea maintenance, because there's a lot of colonies that the Navy runs in conjunction with Solar Warden underneath the water as manufacturing centers, things like that. It was just one of those things that it is a multitude of things. When I say 20 year and back, it wasn't merely one thing that I did for 20 years. I want to make that I didn't do one thing for 20 years. There was these multiple memories and events as I aged, as I progressed, as I was initiated to higher ranks. I've always, like I said, in the incarnation, been exceptionally bright and athletic. That has helped. That obviously helped in the initiation progress. It was incredibly quick to go through a lot of these ranks, but just like the Masons, just like the Freemasons or any other mystical occult society, there's orders and there's initiations and rites and different duties and responsibilities. So it's in the organ structure of the system itself to constantly be changing. One year you're doing this, then you do good enough to do something else the next year, and it keeps going into that constant changing kind of path.
Now,
right?
This is an important question that I hope you can help me understand, or at least, if there's no answer, that's fine. But when it comes to living on Earth, we understand there's a certain entropy that causes aging, this sort of cell breakdown. What is going on in this environment, whether it's in outer space or in these, underground bases, underwater bases, even, vehicles that are traveling through space? Are there certain measures taken to protect your cells so that when you're, sort of this time has elapsed, you're not like an old man or something? Or did that indeed happen? Did you experience some sort of physiological symptoms from this 20-year lapse?
If not physiologically, mentally, yes. And I credit a lot to what you're seeing now and who I am now to the fact that I'm effectively 20 years older mentally than the average 35-year-old human being. If given a chance to evolve naturally, a human being would be 35 years old. And now I'm like basically a 55-year-old man in a 35-year-old's body. This was the case when I was 9, being a 29-year-old man in a 9-year-old's body. In terms of thoughts, desires, urges, memories, like the idea of perspective, like coordination and knowledge. And that's why, like I said, I went to Texas A&M University, TAMU, which is the #2 university in Texas, but I had a scholarship anywhere I wanted to go in the country because my grade percentage was that high. I could have gone to Harvard. I had a scholarship to Oxford in England. I could have been a Rhodes Scholar. Like any school, university in America would have accepted because the grades were already there. It was like one of those packages. I had like no denial letters from any school I had sent to. And I chose that because of convenience, but also the tradition of, I like that school, right? But the idea there is that I did that because I wasn't a normal 18-year-old. I was a 38-year-old mentally and taking high school classes. When I took the SATs, I was mentally a 38-year-old man. Like the idea now, I'm a 50, like mentally. Right. And to explain that, obviously there's really no way of explaining that, but there is a very pronounced understanding of what I'm able to think about and what I'm doing is not average. I understand that. I understand.
And I will give credit to that, man, because it's very rare that someone is able to recall as much information as you have just in this one conversation. And like I said, I have tuned into your show, and yeah, it's impressive, man. I definitely see proof for what you're saying just in who you are. Now, when it comes to the age, so when you're in this, let's call it, for lack of a better term, other reality, are you a 9-year-old? Are you an adult man? Is it like your spirit vessel, your astral body, maybe, for lack of a better word? How exactly, is this taking place? Or are you just aging from 9 to 29 and then you go back with the intelligence of a, 29-year-old, but you sort of reset your body?
That last part is accurate. You basically summarized what is effectively the reality of it. The specifics, as you mentioned before, up to debate. There are different peoples in the community that talk about different things. Dark Fleet survivors, Dark Fleet 20 and back, like Tony Rodriguez, for example, talk about being cloned. There's a lot of cloning. There's a lot of spirit transfers into clones. Like you become a clone, but they can put like a shard of your spirit, and then that spirit grows. And so you're seeing the memories of that clone. Solar Warden doesn't do that. As far as I can tell and the experience that I have, you start at 9 and age in the average biological growth of a human being. It's not based on solar cycle, right? You are 20 years affected time, whatever that is. You're not going light speed. That's the thing. We're not traveling. We're only staying high Earth orbit. The moon, Mars at the furthest, like Jupiter in the asteroid belts. I have memories of those places at the furthest, but that doesn't require light speed enough to make like an interstellar where it's like 10 minutes here is 50 days or whatever over there, and we're gonna be 80 years old by the time we get back. Our family's gonna be dead. No, like you are 9. I was 9. I keep saying that second person. I am 9 when I started this, and I ended at 29. Now, through this process, dealing with extraterrestrials, dealing with warfare, dealing with the actual life of living in Solar Warden and the growing pains of human psychology, cybernetics, implants, training, and the greater purpose of like the zone that you're in, you are still effectively, yes, growing and living your life. Teenage years, all of them, teenage years into your 20s, but by the age of 29, you are an old trooper. You're an old man. You are like, that is very distinct. Yes, they use children, child slaves. They use child soldiers. They use child. They only use them in the late teenage years for actual ground combat, but the younger the better, because there's very little more you can do physically than when you're very young. Imagine the high school football team type attitude, but with cybernetics and the kind of gung-ho mental brainwashing that goes on. As I said, like, you live your life, by the end of your 20s, you probably have amputations from more wounds, probably replaced with cybernetics and prosthetics. You have had sex with at least 1,000 people. The big part of it is the idea of this erosion of connection through orgies and state sanctioned like prostitution through as reward for deed, and they basically control everyone through their id and like these various commodifications of like human contact and touch, and even things like you could, I know for a fact you could save up basically points for certain perks like more affection with sex. Like, you actually get to like spoon and sleep together with another human being as being more coveted than just like a blowjob or oral sex, or something like the idea of commodifications of like just simple things like eye contact or like praise and things like that. That's how brutal it is. It's not, and yes, it's based on knightly orders. It's based on asceticism, denial of urges and pleasures, just physical fitness and power, strength, mental agility, competition, sadism, absolute masculinity, like very much, and it's all controlled and manipulated by much more intelligent beings. That's why AI constructs. The officer class are in 80-year and back, so they are in an 80-year back cycle and basically preserved in their later years, just so that they can mentally, be used for strategy and administration and things. But it's mostly AI now. It's extraterrestrially run as well. The Venusians oversee all of Earth and the Ashtar High Command, and there are over a dozen races in the Ashtar High Command. In the solar system alone, there's over 900 species. Now, this is distributed across a number of worlds that they don't even disclose, and moons such as Jupiter. Jupiter has over 70 moons that are all capable of holding life, for example, right? And that's a big part of it, is that not everyone is advanced. There's actually only 90 species, that are as advanced as, mankind, as competitive on a level. So 90 out of 900. Most being just animals so that are intelligent, like dolphins, things like that. Like dolphins count, that they're on the list. Chimpanzees, they're given, non-human personhood, basically respect that way, right? That you can't affect their evolution or life unless you get permission from even higher up beings. Now, that's the kind of relationship we have with these extraterrestrials. They do all the thinking, they do all the control and all the decision making. We just do all the grunt work, even when it's highly sophisticated grunt work, like operating fleets of naval vessels, doing security patrols on their travel lines between here and the moon, keeping the upper atmosphere free from rogue intelligent life forms. The Greys, for example, are huge fucking criminals, poachers. They are they're extremely intelligent. They have no morality. They will exploit any end that you give them. So you always have to be constantly vigilant for them. And we have enemies actively fighting on Earth or for Earth. In the Orion Draco tribes. That ended just recently within the last decade. But when I was there, it was very much a active war zone. We had security over it, but just like Iraq or Afghanistan, and in the last 20 years, having control of something and still, being guaranteed to survive the next, through the night are two different things. Everyone is vulnerable, and weapons, the way they work. If it wasn't for AI, I don't think it would be possible. But AI is absolutely how it's defended and how it's run, how it's managed, and how it's basically, structured. Is to preserve these AI-run defense facilities, etc. Like I said, it's automated. The work of one man is also helped out by 1,000 machines. This is Solar Warden. This is alien technology using Clark Tech anti-gravity. Ships still have crews of 1,000. You know, they're kilometers long. They are able to dock and have ships, aircraft inside them that are themselves half a mile in wingspan. And they can have fleets of these that themselves have fleets of UAVs. So the power projection, whether, as I said, it's not grunt work, but it is grunt work spiritually to be running these air forces, these navies, and what they are space navies that are operating basically as Coast Guard. And that's the language of Space Force. If you are like paying attention to the real life language of Space Force, that they are operating to protect shipping, they protect the commerce, the economy, they protect the moon, and more off-world priorities than on-world priorities. This is disclosure. That's what Solar Warden would do, is say protect more Antarctica than say continental United States.
Right.
Continental United States being left to the conventional forces, but Antarctica, that being highly, highly secretive land. Moon, for example, lunar colonies, Mars colonies, colonies off of space stations that are in orbit, facilities that are on asteroid belts like Cirrus in the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. These are outposts and colonies that have hundreds of millions of people all added up that rely on Solar Warden and fleets like Solar Warden. There's Dark Fleet, that's Germany, that's not Waffen. That's the survivors of the Third Reich, and they made the Fourth Reich, and they operate as a breakaway civilization. They are on our team, for lack of a better word, but their practices are real oriented, and they operate under a goal called the Giza Intelligence Operation, which makes them more allied to the Orion Draco, who pose as their Egyptian pantheon. And they basically are employed as a mercenary crew for immortality. And basically, they're real sciences which keep them immortal and allow for like psychic communication, soul bonding, and things like that. It helps out their society. They're very real oriented. That's why they're not Solar Warden. They're a distinct faction. There's various different groups like the ICC, the acronym that can mean several things, but it's basically the Interplanetary Corporation Conglomerate, or the cartels. They operate as the industrial side of things, merchant mariner craft. Most of the off-world colonists and ships and activity is ICC, for example. This is the business. This is all for the money. This is all dollar bill. They reap in trillions of just tons of raw material, exotic material. They operate in this post-scarcity environment. Like I said, this idea that they are operating as a monopoly on trade to become basically humans, Dutch East India Company in outer space, which is what they are. They go to different they're inhabited, but they're they're primitive islands, basically, as far as they're concerned. Plunder, colonize, loot, set up a little trading post, and then expect to be kept secure against any kind of local trouble or any kind of piracy. And they hire out these militarized space forces like Waffen, Solar Warden, in which there are several others. Generally, this is what the operations that we revolved in. Solar Warden's more defensive, nobler. People can call it nobler. In which it's more altruistic, it's more big picture oriented. It does things like sacrificing itself a little bit more. It's stretching its manpower out so that the Earth can be defended. The secret can be kept. However noble you want to think that is, as long as, like Men in Black, as long as the Earth thinks everything is going okay, they don't care how it's done. There could be fucking a death ray pointed at Earth, and there's a space battle. And you remember the spaceship shows up in Men in Black, and it's like there's always a fucking death ray. There's always some kind of trilithium thing, big bomb gonna blow up New York City. Always, as long as they don't freak out, as long as we don't freak out, everything can keep going, and we'll figure out how to fix it. And we have the Men in Black are a part of it. That's like the domestic, Earth FBI type thing. Like, because there is colonization going on. There are extraterrestrials living on Earth currently. The ultra-terrestrials too. it's law and order. That's what I'm saying. Like the Solar Warden keeps law and order. Whatever you want to say that's noble or not, they keep the peace. And currently there's this like big push to peace. But yeah, like the world is fucking massive. It's a big place, complicated. There are hundreds of players, hundreds of factions, all going to work right now. It's not just one monolithic thing.
Yeah.
Currently, the monolithic power is the Ashtar High Command, the Galactic Federation of Light.
Right.
They are will be undeniably largest and most powerful, most advanced power that operates through its delegates, its proxy forces and armies. And there's just hundreds of species that are, like I said, by the time they get down to the Venusians and the Ashtar High Command, we are dealing with like the proxies of the proxy.
Well, and that's exactly where I wanted to maybe ask you next. And I should say, you're absolutely right. I love sitting here and listen to you, describe this, because I'm just visualizing it. And to your earlier point, it's like science fiction.
Ray Bradbury created Star Trek. People don't know this, but you can watch Ancient Aliens on the History Channel and they'll openly talk about it. He was in contact with a secret society called the Council of the Nine.
Right.
And the Council of the Nine is the Giza Intelligence Real Society of the Notwaffen fleet, who came from the Fourth Reich and owned most of what we know as Hollywood in America for like 40 years until they gave the torch to Solar Warden. And I think people don't realize that what you see on TV and what has been called science fiction, from Star Wars to Star Trek to all the books like Starship Troopers, that is all published by Faustian, Luciferian secret society groups that are themselves the very first groups, the puppets of the strings being pulled. Because when these societies, these extraterrestrial societies, intervened in our species, they were calling themselves angels or devils. Whatever got people's attention, they were communicating and telling people what to and how to do it from the very start. Look at the Vanderbilts. The Vanderbilts built a train station, right? Grand Central Station. And on the roof, they used all the constellations of the horoscope. The horoscope has for thousands of years been used as code for communication with extraterrestrials, because it is literally the cosmos and the different zodiacs of the different species, literally physically described as the species that they look like and the values that they represent. Vanderbilt was openly in contact with spirits. He called them spirits, but he thought of them as Greek gods. He thought he was communicating with like the Greek gods. These are the extraterrestrials. These have always been the extraterrestrials. From the founding of the Mormon Church to the founding of the fucking United States of America, George Washington was in contact with spiritual beings. That's like so there's not one point in human history where we were like on our own or doing our own thing. We have been contested over and fought over between various extraterrestrial forces. We were actually created by these extraterrestrial forces, like ancient aliens type stuff.
Now, is this where you think that like the stark and shocking number of missing children and even missing people are ending up? Is this a sort of like part of the secret space program, how they abduct people for various means, maybe darker, some...
Or the deep state, part of the secret space program, the abductions, the missing people. Many of the children, for example, it coincided completely with the secret space program's creation of the Solar Warden. In the 70s and 80s, hundreds of thousands of missing kids all across America, right? Kids were very publicly taken, like Johnny Gosh, all these people. Yes, a lot of them had very cruel and terrible fates at the hands of the many evil secret societies that operate, the Kabbalists, the Black Magicians, but many others, the vast majority of them, were taken to fill up the first ranks of this program. And back then it was a one-way ticket. They didn't have the quantum folding technology that they have today. Like you said, if you look at logic, like they were in the 70s. So as technology progressed, they were then able to return kids. And they started being able to return kids around the 90s. That's when child abductions really did drop off. But that was also the end of what they called the satanic panic. The satanic panic, which was, how do you get these kids? Through satanic groups.
Right.
Because who's willing to kidnap a child? Only really a Satanist.
Right.
So you have to kind of, you had to do all these weird, like, you think they're unconnected. What do small Satan groups that kidnap children have for the CIA have to do with space programs? Well, you need kids to become the pilots for these space programs that sacrifice themselves for experiments and things like that.
Right.
You need a lot of them.
Right.
And not only that, if you look at it even a greater perspective of missing people, the Galactic Treaty signed in the 1950s with Eisenhower and the Greys. Treaties are signed all the time between groups that want power and groups that have power, typically at the cost of innocent people. Think of this in terms, though, of a logical politician and businessman. If an intelligent species said they're going to give you weapons technology and they're going to give you anti-gravity, time travel, sciences that are like magic to you, Wi-Fi technology, computers, all this cool shit. In the 50s, right? 50s, you're thinking about the 50s, you're Eisenhower, and it's going to give you military supremacy. You're going to be able to beat the Russians, right? And you're like, wow, what do I got to give you? We only want 0.025% of your population for no questions asked. Just give it to us, right? We're going to take it. And you don't even have to give them, we're going to take them. That's what we want you to agree with, though. Before we start going to Area 51 and giving you the ability to build the Space Force to literally get yourself into the stars on equal footing with the very extras that you're talking to now, right? Like, we can fly there, we can do all that stuff. You want that power too? Give us 0.025% of your population legally so that you can't do anything about it and you can't ask us, like, you can't even get mad about it. Like spiritually. You have acquiesced to this. You have volunteered, you have agreed to this contract. That Faustian deal was signed, and 0.025% of almost 300 million people is a lot of people, a lot of individual lives, a lot of children, a lot of people taken out of their homes with no answers, a lot of people who were never seen again after going into the parks, a lot of people literally who vanished in midair. And all that missing 411 stuff, not keeping records, it's a big part of why. Like I said, because it's easier when you don't even count them.
Right.
Stop being taken. We've already signed the deal 50 years ago. You can't really, say beyond our control because our leadership was agreed to it. And you see that it kind of runs the screen. You're like, that's the world we really live in. This idea that, just because a vampire exists and is eating people doesn't mean a vampire couldn't be a senator.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, or Johnny Depp, or, there are definitely people who have made their way through history, like the Count Saint Germain,
That kind of stuff. The actors, not all the actors are human. Very obviously, the transformation, the cloaking fails, and you see them for what they are. And then you think maybe that's part of the deal. Maybe this is all part of what I was talking about before. That the Notwaffen, who is real, who works with reptilians and controls Hollywood, has made a deal saying that they can colonize Earth. What are you going to do on Earth, though? You still got to do a job. You still got to live, right? Acting. How does that really even work? No, you'll be but Robert Pattinson. You'll be Ryan Gosling. You'll be Tom Cruise. You'll be Will Smith. You'll be these people. All that money that's just thrown at you is then used to kind of provide for all your desires and urges that aren't necessarily human, even your privacy. And people like the guy from Smashing Pumpkins have said that they have seen with their own eyes people turn reptilian. That is the thing. It's called a caste system. Not every species wants to do every kind of labor. There are castes of, reptilian entertainers, and that's what they're bred to do. That's what they think. Anything different besides being stars, celebrities, just worship for their charisma is demeaning to them. So a deal is made. You know what? Give us access to the reptilian cities under LA. You guys can always live here. You guys always have a home. Every couple of years, just change your face, become a new person, and you'll always be able to eat guinea pigs or drink baby blood or whatever the hell you guys want to do, right? And you're like, yeah, here are the keys to this reptilian city. And that's the deal that was made. And these idea of deals, Faustian treaties, deals, secret ET alliances.
Well, to add to that, I mean, we've
much more common. Every country has one. Every group has one. Small towns have them. Individual people have made them with other individual extraterrestrials. Things like that. People
Right.
aren't going to want to talk about it. Yes, hopefully all regulated. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, we're a part of a very big ecosystem. And the world that people think is reality are just lines on a map or just words on a page.
right.
They have to open their eyes and see for themselves that we are not alone, that they walk amongst us, that they live while we sleep. Just
Right.
like that movie. They live while we sleep. And you put on the glasses and you see on the glasses, you can see for what it is. And you see them, they're not human, but they are in our cities. They are in our stores. They are operating our banks. They're doing things which we think are modern, but are really alien invasions. And people have not become the ones because it's happened for so slowly over the course of hundreds of thousands of years, or hundreds and thousands of years, like banks. The idea of banking is an extraterrestrial concept, a mimetic invasion that was originally pioneered by a species that wasn't entirely human.
Right.
Maybe a hybrid. They were called the tall whites. This is the thing, the idea of pyramid building. These things that we think are human, but yet people don't do naturally. Who has built a city that you know about?
Well, and on your point about Los Angeles, the word means a city of angels. I've seen research that connects these like angelic sailor stories to reptilian beings. Who knows? Maybe there's something there. But to your point about all these variety of species, does that account for beings like Sasquatch or even maybe more monstrous creatures like, Mothman and Loch Ness and, the whole list? And, I know this is one of your many interests. Are there any cryptids that you think maybe my audience may have never heard of? Because I'm always interested in learning about new cryptids.
Absolutely. Cryptozoology, I think, is a big part of it. Like I said, connect a lot of dots. That's a huge pillar of what I do. Like a lot of work I spend on cryptozoology, finding videos, discussing the theory behind it, also the science behind zoology and just biology when it comes to how extraterrestrials work and how these cryptids work. Like, they're not fantastic. When you start thinking about them, they make perfect sense. It's just that our perspective on nature is very, very limited. We've only explored 85% 15% of the ocean. 85% of the ocean is completely unexplored. It is unfair then to say sea monsters may or may not be real, because 85% of the ocean is a question mark. We've never been or explored there. To call them a monster in their ecology, they say like Bigfoot. People think America is very well explored. Almost 25% of the United States has never been explored except through airplanes or satellites. 70% of Spain is uninhabited. Do you know, like I said, the idea of geography, the mental pictures are very small. We know everything. Humanity stretches to every corner, and our lights defeat all the darkness and everything we see, and we change nature. And we have scientists. Most scientists do not get out of the laboratory or the lecture hall. If you want to talk about cryptozoology without going too deep into the world of the woo, watch Extinct or Alive with Forrest Galante on the Animal Planet. Great show, great host. He's a cryptozoologist because he's hunting animals that science has said were extinct. But he proves by finding specimens that they are not extinct, just that most of the world is run by academics who don't go to the locations for these animals, like the Caribbean monk seal. The Caribbean monk seal lives in the Caribbean Sea, and near the Gulf of Mexico, right off of Florida. They said it was extinct for the last 30 years. He goes to the Caribbean and finds one. Still alive, not the only one. The idea, though, is that science has this pride and this like, they claim because they claim that this is the truth, and it's clearly not. Like Forrest Galactic proves that this is, it shoots it all through the holes. It proves that science has no clue what they're talking about when it comes to the extent of what's there and what's not, right? Conventional animals, like this black tortoise is extinct. He goes and finds the black tortoise. The Caribbean monk seal is extinct, finds the monk seal. Dwarf hippopotamus on Madagascar finds the bones where they said there were no bones. So he finds a skeleton that's fresh. Like the idea that this guy is actually going out there, and simply going out there, you can find proof. Same with cryptozoology throughout the board. But yes, to answer your question, why I think that's valid is because, yes, a lot of them are extraterrestrials. Many of them are extraterrestrials that are misidentified. Many of them are ultra-terrestrials. I've talked about before, or cryptoterrestrials, if you prefer that term. Cryptoterrestrials being a term more in line with a species that's intentionally keeping itself hidden. Like you get to differentiate. Where's the species that is either rare or just lives in a far remote and generally unreachable environment, right? So the idea that cryptids are necessarily beasts, I like challenging that. I think cryptids are proof of an intelligence that is equal to mankind, if not superior, at least in the ways of evasion, or at least in the ways of simply remaining stealth and camouflaged, or in equilibrium with an environment, right? So it is literally the idea that there is much more to nature than simply mankind. Nature did not exist to evolve mankind and mankind alone. Yes, there are winged humanoids. Yes, there are subterranean humanoids. Yes, there are the large, giant humanoids that we would call giant. And in this differentiating that, the giant idea, which is always very popular, what is a giant compared to a different breed of human being, or a human being at their correct size? The idea that what is a correct size for a human being is a question that I like to ask a lot, like to destabilize the notion of cultural relativism or species centrism. That human beings are not the center of the earth. We are not the center of the universe. Our physical form is not perfect, nor is it superior just by definition. We are creatures of our environment. We are creatures that have created our environment, thus able to sustain ourselves. But only through technology. The idea that creatures couldn't either modify themselves, or how evolution works, like the idea behind even that, that needs to be questioned. That needs to be challenged. It needs to be explored. As in terms of the cryptids and extraterrestrials, the idea that grays are the only extraterrestrial needs to stop. That idea that extraterrestrials are a handful of specific physiological forms needs to stop. That thing that extraterrestrials are all humanoid needs to stop, because you cannot properly identify what's an extraterrestrial and what isn't, or even what is alive and what isn't, when you have preconceived notions of what life needs to look like. Energetic beings of just thought, light, like K-Pax, like the idea that you're a light beam and you have a personality and your persona. Plasma beings, all beings that exist on different frequencies of existence, like ultraviolet spectrum or radiological spectrum. So like you're a being of pure radiation, i.e. heat, and like you're this idea that our simple carbon meat-based biology is all there, like, because humans have 5 fingers, 5 toes, that's how everyone is, because humans are a certain height in our society, that's how tall everyone gets. The idea that anything different is necessarily monstrous, necessarily unnatural. Like when you see a Mothman, people being like, oh, well, how could this unnatural thing exist? And the idea that Mothman might not even be rare, it just might be a very displaced version of itself, like a lone explorer from a planet full of Mothmen, you know. And on his planet, like all beings have wings, and we're like, you know, he's trying to explore our world, and thus the Men in Black are there. They correlate the story. Good reason bringing up the Mothman. John Keel is very much how. Yeah, huge inspiration. He worked on the Mothman prophecies. He's the one who wrote the Mothman prophecies. He's the one who investigated came up with the term super spectrum to help explain all the fucking weirdness that was going on at that time. The Men in Black, the bridge, the phone calls, Indrid Cold, the Mothman, all of that was happening at the same time in the same area. But it was all unique and different, but it was all connected. He just didn't know how. So he called it the super spectrum, that somehow this was all a part of a super spectrum, combining the different involvements of either people having just seen the Mothman once or having Indrid Cold continually visit a person as a contactee. Like those in the Men in Black, for example, being there to silence and suppress, and then the bridge collapse. All of it could be the fact that all these phenomena are constantly occurring all around us, and it's only in these weird moments that we start making connections. Or it could be that none of it really is distinct, that the whole phenomenon could be like bleeding worlds, like where one universe is entering another universe, and that we're seeing a multiverse type thing. We're seeing an alternative Earth, right, with the Bigfoot sightings. But we are seeing an alternative evolution of mankind, or maybe even having already dealt with that time, like a quantum disruption, forced both species to live together. And because they live in the woods and the mountains, their society is kept secret and coexist with ours, except for the odd transgression. As far as Bigfoot goes, I know for a fact the Yeti, the idea of the Sasquatch, human being, unshaven, higher testosterone for the amount of body hair and size, but human. Neanderthal, considered whatever subspecies of human, but absolutely human of mind, human of ability. They have cities, they have culture, they have high society, they have technology. The ones we see are equal to our native Aboriginal people, the uncontacted tribes of the Amazon, or the Papua New Guinea, the cargo cult type, I don't want to call them savages, but the idea that they walk around shoeless and basically buck naked in the wild, picking and foraging berries. But the society, the species, is capable of very high cognitive functions and organization. They have cities that exist beneath the Rocky Mountains and beneath the forests of many national parks. They try to live with a carbon neutral impression. Thus, they aren't giving off pollution signatures. They aren't giving off massive heat signatures from cities that are operating with like manufacturing, and they don't have capitalism. And because they don't have capitalism, their society is in no way or shape or form organized like our own, where trucks have to take goods from settlement to settlement to make profits, and that everyone has to get up at 9 a.m. to go to work, and because they have to go to work for 8 hours, because everyone has to go to work because they all have to pay rent. And the capitalists, they don't have to do that. Whatever society they have, which is still a mystery, I'm not claiming to know their society, but I know it's not what we have. And because of that, we are blind to it. And the everyday person, our governments know, they communicate from the highest level. These anthropologists, government scientists, groups that are like government science, groups like the national resources and national parks level, the different schools and societies like Freemasons. It's very easy to think of that. Like there's anthropologists, Freemasons. They're very intelligent people, right? Well, obviously he volunteers to keep the secret because he's a Freemason. And it's all kind of like, yeah, it's easier when you think that. Why would a scientist keep the secret? He's a Freemason. If he tells anyone, they're going to slit his throat. And you're like, what? Yeah. And so but he also gets to talk to Bigfoot. So that's a career, you're never going to get another opportunity like that, right? So take it. So no. we have this. Do you know one of the biggest Bigfoot hotspots is San Antonio, Texas? And do you know that's a very famous Bigfoot hotspot because there was an anthropologist who confessed to being paid by the government to go and communicate with active populations of Bigfoot during wildfires and droughts and during wild hazards and things like that. Basically, to make sure that there was a good diplomacy, basically. And I know it sounds weird because you're like, why would they be diplomatic to animals? Because they're not animals; they're Native Americans. And think of it that way, that they're still living in their old ways. But the thing is, their society, that little group was just a fringe of a much larger, much better organized society with high culture, with deep values, with intelligent designs to how to organize and function, rituals, things like that, what you would know as distinctly human. No question about it. Human, right? Like, they don't wear shoes. I don't wear shoes most times. I take you to a forest in Oregon, and there's a woman named Melon Raindrop Turtle, and she doesn't wear shoes nor shave her legs, and she'll have a baby in a river. And if you saw that, you would think, well, we saw Bigfoot, a less hairy Bigfoot, a smaller Bigfoot. If you found her little tracks on the riverbank as she was doing laundry on a stone, you would think that this society, it must be Stone Age and primitive. No, we go to space. We have rocket scientists and like heart surgeons and like NASCAR. And I'm saying, like, we have we late stage capitalism problems. That's a choice. That's a lifestyle choice. And we can't identify that the Bigfoots and Sasquatch that we see are making lifestyle choices based on the educated, cultural decisions of an intelligent primate. When you saw the Ruby Ridge Bigfoot walking around with knockers that was a hippie Bigfoot.
Patty
doing her freaky hippie thing.
Yeah.
When you saw that, you interrupted her mushroom trip. Just like if you would go to Coachella or, we have music festivals all around the world. Like if you went to one of those like Fish concerts and saw a woman like just butt naked walking around the forest, you wouldn't think, oh, this is how they all look. Like this is the limit. This is they all look like. Right. And then she was drawing of a woman like with hairy armpits and hairy legs. You're like, I saw this. I don't know. All women shave. I can't explain why they're covered in hair. They must all be covered in hair all the time.
Yeah.
And I proved it by not shaving my beard for a year or two, and it was about this long, and you couldn't see through it. I said, if a man did that for all his life, you couldn't see through this hair covering.
That's a great point.
I've never Williams level hairy dude, never shaved in his life. You would think he's Bigfoot.
Well, I've never considered it quite like that. And yeah, I think that's a compelling take. I mean, I definitely have read stories.
They have helicopters, they have cities, they have a higher advanced level theory and philosophy and organization. It's that their culture is not based on monetary acquisition, cargo cultism, things that we identify as human and in terms of evolution. Like just looking at your studio right now, I see you have a bookshelf, I see you have art and decorations, I see you have things that are important to you as identified. What if Bigfoot never really lived like that and just his natural world was more prioritized?
Right.
Like it's hard. It's so different because mankind is so different.
Well, and there are stories to back up what you're saying in the Native American folklore as well. The stories of groups of giants that lived in other places, hospitable places that men shouldn't go. Because they maybe didn't get along in most cases with these giants. But
I've said before, our evolution is not natural, and mankind, if it looks at itself in a mirror, cannot then look at nature and hope to see its reflection, because mankind is about as unnatural as a bulldog is as to nature. No, it is. And to see a wolf in its natural environment, a bulldog would have a lot of questions. It would.
Yeah.
A bulldog is genetically 99.9% similar to a wolf. they are in fact very closely related. You know, like the most closely related animals you're gonna probably find. You know, it's not a cat, it's not a bear, it's a dog, right? So dog and dog. But the qualities, the nature, the society, the everyday existence of a wolf, right? The physical proportions, the shaggy coat, the snout, the teeth, all of that is not the world or the biology or the nature of the bulldog, because the bulldog has been bred by intelligent beings, mankind, to not be natural, to be a companion and work animal for our desire and for our pleasure. It had no say in the fact. It was involuntarily bred. That's it. No human being volunteered for this. We have been bred on a genetic level, and it's not like we were forced into mating programs. They just took our genetic level and in test tubes produced generations of clones that became Homo sapien.
Yeah.
And they, through time, carefully engineered us, not only physically, but mentally. Why are we hairless? Why are bulldogs' faces short? You just breed that trait into them.
Right.
What we're seeing with Sasquatch is a more natural man, a man that is not enslaved by his very genetics. And I say enslaved by our genetics, not because...
Well, you can even look at...
Bulldog forever genetically. That gene, I like that. It's existentially, you're locked in.
Well, look at a boar compared to a pig, you know? I mean, there's a great case. If you leave a pig out long enough in the wild, it'll become a boar again, you know, especially if it you know, stays out there for generations. But yeah, that's a really interesting take on that I haven't heard in many places. So yeah, Mike, I appreciate you sharing that. Now, as far as the Bigfoot cities go, I mean, Mount Shasta sounds like it would be a likely place. The Rocky Mountains. Are there any other like strange hot spots that maybe people don't know as much about? I think those are like Skinwalker Ranch. Everybody knows about that. What are some like lesser known strange paranormal sites that you've learned about?
Well, just for kind of some brevity, because there's so many for brevity. Northern Canada, extreme northern Canada, and Alaska. Of course, those, you know, they're not rare when you actually stop thinking about it, because Alaska is so popular now with the Alaskan Triangle, with things like that. But the entire northern Arctic Circle in Canada, very, very uninhabited, huge landscapes, like that the history of which is intentionally obfuscated and obscured, because there's so much unexplainable things that happen up there that they'd rather just not talk about it and keep all the attention on the states, which are much more easy to control. You said, even though we're 25% unexplored, Canada is a country that is, like Russia, mostly uninhabited tundra, and mostly ancient forests that would boggle the mind of their ancient, like, you know, just roots. And to be honest, that's probably as close to, like, in my own knowledge of it, as annihilation, or the land time forgot. Because in terms of human civilization and human cultivation, like, so Brazil, you look at the Amazon rainforest, it's being discovered now that regrew over cities, that regrew over human plots, and like the Amazon rainforest. So even that is like as ancient as the old pine forests of like northern Canada, Slave Lake, Yukon-esque highlands, and people don't want to talk about Hyperborea. They don't want to talk about these ancient cities, these alien cities that operate, and Bigfoot cities, civilizations. That is prime land for them to operate in. And it's not unimaginable that it's kept completely secret through the same apparatus. Like I said, individuals and private families and companies, corporations rather than states that have the land. People don't know this, but Canada was almost completely explored and colonized by a fur trading company called the Greater Canadian Fur Trapper Company. They were a offshoot of the Dutch East India Company. They were in the British royalty as a private corporation and a venture. They themselves have most of the responsibility in suppressing information about Bigfoot and the history that they discovered in Canada and most of the American forests. Remember, during the Louisiana Purchase, their territory stretched all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Their trappers and explorers are probably some of the only human eyes that have ever seen the full extent of the North American landscape, and it stayed that way. Because it all became observed by the national parks. It all became nationalized by the national parks. But that is the first, like, Arthur C. Clarke, not like Lewis and Clark expeditions and explorations into the country. And I am 100% sure that all of it has been obscured, and the entire history of Native Americans is a cover-up, is a complete falsification for what they truly found out there. Same as the mound builders. The mound builders in America and the United States, like evidence and proof of advanced civilization capable of building monuments, but it's completely obscured and not talked about at all. And in fact, like if it ever is mentioned, it's considered pseudoscience and things like that. Same thing. I would say that that's a big area to explore. Northern Canada.
Wow.
Huge mystery.
Yeah.
Most of the forested areas of Canada.
No
For
doubt.
example, they have a thing called the Granite Shield. The Granite Shield
Yeah.
is the largest single piece of granite in the world, in which you could build an impenetrable labyrinth or city inside that rock, just like you could do anywhere. But the idea that it's basically larger than the continental United States and is a single piece of granite.
Wow.
So I'm saying I'm not saying I know for a fact what would be in there or what is in that area, but yeah, it's on the radar top 10 of mine for places that are not talked about but are highly mysterious and should be investigated. Like I said, everyone wants to go to the deserts. Everyone wants to go to places like inside the continental United States or inside the Western world. I would say Northern Canada, Africa. Africa is a big part of it. Patagonia in South America is a nice little explorable part. They still say giants live in Patagonia. I believe it. I would absolutely believe it. The mountains over there are still, I mean, you can say you explored them, you can say you own them, but yeah, I mean, that's just a line on a map, right? I mean, That's to say, like, they have the Rocky Mountains in South America with almost nobody on them. And it's like, it stands to reason that these mountain ranges are the perfect hiding spots for breakaway civilizations. Like there could be surviving Incas, there could be surviving Aztecs. Like I know for a fact there are surviving Aztecs in the jungles.
I mean there are whole
various other cultures and civilizations like the Tartarians, the Mu could still be in absolute still existence.
Well,
you could have,
to your point about using biology, when we have biology, when we look at biology as our, so many strange things, there are actual mountains where only certain species that are indicative to that mountain exist because the mountain's so isolated, and there's an entire ecosystem that exists on top of that. So to your point, yeah, I don't doubt that at all. There are stories of Magellan coming across giants, and that's why he named Patagonia what it is. It actually means the land of giants. So
land of giants.
Yeah,
exactly. Like people think those places are explored because they're in Argentina. That means nothing. But realistically, that means nothing. They have no real presence there. Like this is an untamed wilderness. And like to say what could possibly be in there, to put people in perspective, Woodward TV talks about this a lot. Love that YouTube channel, like Woodward TV. Interviewed him earlier in my own career. He said that giant creatures like kaiju, like Godzilla, if you thought about the scale that's presented, right, like the official canon scale, a creature like that could easily live and exist in over 100 regions in the world that are national park, like the Gobi Desert, Siberia, and just have free reign to move wherever they chose and still never encounter a human being. Wow. There are national parks in China that are huge rainforests, mountainsides. There are entire islands in Indonesia without names. Like, without names, there are thousands of islands in the Philippines and Indonesia, different coves that literally have no names in the 21st century because they're unexplored. If it was an oceanic environment, just to say the oceans, like, as a big, like, what's mysterious? All of the oceans, all of them. We need to start. If anything, if I had the power of the Thanos, and everyone had to listen to me, or I'm going to snap the glove, right? And I was like, okay, get to work on one thing: exploring the oceans as a society and as a species. That is the biggest mystery in the final frontier. Not only do I know it's not explored, but there are obviously intelligent creatures that are human or humanoid, merfolk, either the aquatic ape theory, which is extremely popular, and the idea of divergence of species, but just the sheer possibilities that exist on the bottom of the ocean and in the ocean, in terms of fauna and just environmental, like, oddities to be discovered. Like, it's space. It's the final frontier. You don't even need to go to space. Just go into the ocean. It's much wilder. It's much more difficult to explore. It has intelligent life in there. Like I said, that is a space within a space. And our space, outer space, is like an ocean in many, many ways, not just metaphorically, but physically. The same medium, liquid medium that you have transverse through. That, yes, in many ways they intersect. The exploration of the oceans is the same spirit as the exploration of space. And that needs to be, like I said, if I had the one power to make people see that, like, open their eyes and start, like, immediately today working on it, would be the exploration of the oceans. Not seeing them merely as something to exploit or fish or pollute, or just as an inconvenience to sail across, but, to really take our time and put as much funding and energy into exploring and mastering. Like we are already in that phase, and people don't even know it, that there are undersea colonies, that there are undersea cities, that there's going to be undersea mining, that there are people who are going to be born under the ocean, that there are going to be people who are dying under the ocean, that they are going to call it a full-time settlement and colony. Chinese are going to do it. It's a big part of what they're doing in Southeast Asia. Americans are going to do it. Americans have already been doing it. Private companies are doing it without nationality, without flags. Industrialized societies like British Petroleum, ExxonMobil, a lot of other various ventures like Halliburton, things like that. The U.S. military has already been doing it, and they've been doing it for a long time. Like, the idea is, just as much importance going and exploring Mars, going and exploring the surface of the moon, of the asteroids and all that, Jupiter, all that good shit. Same as the oceans, if not more, because of course they are right next to us. That they literally are the most alien environment you could ask for, and I personally live within eyesight of it. Like it's just like space. When you look up and you see the stars, and you're like, what's out there? I look at the ocean the same way. I'm like, what is out there?
Yeah.
That's something I think is always neglected. People don't talk about sea monsters enough. People don't talk about mermaids enough. People don't talk about the oceans enough. And when they do talk about it, they kind of like, oh, we know. Remember that? Remember when we were ignorant and we didn't know about the oceans, and sailors told scary stories? They weren't bullshitting. The sailors were trying to get you to see trying to get you to understand why they were like they were the way they were. If you saw a giant squid attack a boat, you'd be a drunk too. Like, you drink a lot of rum afterwards and sit in the bar and tell anyone who would want to listen to you that you saw a squid attack a boat. Like, that's just like, it stays with you. Like the H.P. Lovecraft psyche, that mentality, absolutely ahead of his time and completely accurate. Well, and you even have an idea of what's going on in the ocean.
To your point, H.P. Lovecraft, he lived in a place where there was a lot of sailing going on. New England, where I'm from, a lot of communities along the coast had, big careers whaling and sailing to all these various ports and importing goods. And
he wasn't a layman either. He was a very high-level occultist, not in a society, but self-educated. I think a lot of people, when they look at H.P. Lovecraft, think of him as a purely imaginative writer. he, like, way ahead of his time, of many people like him, were modern men of logic and science. They were modern men of education, and they were dealing with the existential crisis of learning that our world has always been a lie, that what we think of our supremacy is just us on a little island in the middle of a dark ocean, and it's not meant for us to travel very far. You know, like that saying, think of the heavy shit H.P. Lovecraft is dropping in 1920. Stranger eons, death may die. Like just the Antarctic cities created by extraterrestrials that have monstrosities in them that the explorers were encountering at the Mountain of Madness and stuff like that. Like the Mountain of Madness, the idea that the mountains, like I said,
It's perplexing. Yeah, it blows your mind.
Really stop and think about. I'm not the only one. There have been many more like me. It's just my turn. It's my turn to tell the truth, however howling mad that makes me appear to be. Like in the Necronomicon, there's that howling mad Arab who has to write the Necronomicon because of the contact with jinn. No, it's not like the idea of the lore, like when you become aware, it is seen as a madness. It is seen as an obsession.
Right.
And yes, it has a very existential horror to it. But that is mankind facing the unknown. But it's not facing the true unknown, which would just be the dark shadow. It is knowing, but not knowing enough. I know what aliens look like. And we saw the great old things. Just that raises fucking thousands of more questions. Is that a hand? What is like a starfish with wings? What? Like, do they eat people? Why is that guy's brain in a jar? Like, the idea, the question, that's the existential horror, is that you don't have answers for what you're actually seeing. And then, like I said before, the idea of the Shogun or Cthulhu or his descriptions of the elder things, that's unintentional horror. He's just biologically trying to describe the nature of intelligent life as encountered, that it wasn't simple, it wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty. These things were non-human, they were alien, and that means what it means. They don't look anything like anything on Earth looks like. They don't react or behave or are motivated by anything that you understand. And in fact, don't even try to, because you're working with an incomplete, like I said, you don't even try to make sense of the sheer complexity of the universe. So it's like the idea that you're trying to make sense of something that even they don't make sense of. Like I said, like you're trying to come up with the answers of the gods. And I said to think of things in this monotheistic or monolithic understanding where you're like, you're supposed to have complete understanding of God. Is I think, part of the matrix prison that secret societies are hypnotizing people with, that you're supposed to have answers. There are no answers, I think, ultimately at the end of the day. And I think even the wisest human being to have ever lived has very little idea what's going on. And even then still made him intelligent enough at least to wonder why, at least to ask why. But whether or not there was ever an answer to be had, that bridges the gap between ufology, cryptozoology, extraterrestriology, whatever you would call it, like cryptoterrestriology, occultism, demonology. It bridges all of it, which is mankind staring at the universe and trying to define it, trying to answer the great question, which is like, what is it? What is all of it? What is this thing we call the universe?
Right.
And
it's a big question, Mike.
Like I said, we are definitely not the center of it. We're definitely not the center of the universe. Like I said, like that's why I always want to make point clear, is that even though we're much more advanced and involved than people want to admit or disclose, and that itself is controversial, that disclosure is controversial, that we are definitely not the center of the universe. We are not in control. We are not in charge. We're
Right.
not the superior life form or the superior being. We are along for the ride. We are trying to survive. And the only hope we have is if we work together, is if we do our best to tell our stories, to save each other's stories, and to respect everyone's discoveries and efforts. Like now is not the time to try to play King of the Hill or Monkey on the Mountain or whatever he called it as a kid, where you're trying to fight everyone else and
Right.
last man standing is going to be the best. Like, you win whatever the hell. Like, you win a game no one's playing. Like, no, now it's time to really make progress when it comes to this conversation. Like, everyone who has an alien abduction experience, get that out, write that down, talk about it, put it on YouTube, something, save it for the future. Because, like I said, when you're gone, it becomes lost. Exactly. Like the big thing why I put the public archives on there. Because,
Well, and tell people, because we are coming towards the end of our podcast, tell people where they can go to get more information on all this, because clearly we've just touched the tip of the iceberg here. There's so much more to get into, and you're putting that together on Beyond Top Secret Texan. That's a podcast feed. Just type that in, and I'm sure you'll find it. I found it right away when I used Podcast Addict, so they're not censoring you there. That's a good place maybe for you to recommend to your audience. But yeah, tell us where we can follow up with this, because dude, impressive stuff. I'm sitting here compelled. There's so many angles we could take, but unfortunately we're coming towards the end of our time. I'd love to have you back on in the future, but let us know where we can follow and subscribe.
Well, I would definitely love to come back. Always appreciative and honored to be
Thank you.
invited on. And like I said, we'll do this again, and we'll have a more focused and concentrated conversation, make more progress.
Yeah, well, and this is a great way to get to know you, you know? I think sometimes that's how these first conversations go. It's a little mix of everything, you know?
And they feel around, but no, I hope that made more sense than what it sounded like. Hopefully it makes more sense with it.
Yeah, no,
I always
I hear you.
don't even hear what I'm saying. I kind of get in these zones. Because there's so much to explain, like there's so much you're trying to make sense of. Like, hopefully we have a part 2, we have a part 3 to kind of focus on and talk about these things in greater detail.
Yeah.
Find me on Linktree, obviously everyone knows that. Only link you're going to need, Linktree/Beyond Top Secret Texan. One word, all lowercase, Beyond Top Secret Texan. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the social platforms, all the merch websites like mypodpage.com, which is my free episodes, all up there on my own website, or you can use Spotify, Apple Tunes. I think there's like 15, maybe 20 different providers. I always find new providers, but Linktree/Beyond Top Secret Texan is going to be the only link you're going to need to use to find all of that. My Patreon, my TikTok, my Instagram, merch store, all of that are on there. Is a Linktree/Beyond Top Secret Texan. Only link you're going to need. So thank you very much for having me on, Mark. Been great. Love your podcast and what it's been doing with the Alt Media United. That co-op is great. Does a good service. You're doing great work.
Thank you.
I see you guys are doing great work. I have a plan to listen to a lot more of your episodes. Listen to a few of them today.
Cool.
Like what I heard.
Right
Listen
on.
to episode from Gen Z.
Yeah, Dave's real cool.
Yep. So definitely looking forward to hearing more of your work as well.
Thank you, Mike, and a real pleasure to talk to you. For everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and have a great moment wherever you are in the now. Wow. That's all I have to say, folks. Wow. Didn't get a word in much this interview, but that's all right. The guest had a lot to say, and there's so much more to hear. Go over to Beyond Top Secret Texan and check out everything Mike has to say. Very compelling guy. Very, very high level recall. He's definitely knowing, excuse me, he definitely knows how to paint a picture, that's for sure. Like I said, a man of few words this interview, but yeah, I think Mike has a lot on his mind. I mean, and how could you not? If what he's saying is true and he's really undergone all of those things, I certainly wouldn't want to say no. Certainly wouldn't want to be the guy to not hear someone like this out and maybe miss out on this whole side of the world that's out there, just beyond the firmament, or beyond the stars, or beyond the clouds, whatever your worldview is. Me, I don't really care. On to more important things. Definitely fascinating to hear Mike's take on Sasquatch. Wow, I'd never considered that the Sasquatches that we see above ground are like the wild, hairy versions of a giant species of maybe less hairy Sasquatch underground. I don't know, I'm kind of imagining like a Planet of the Apes situation where they're all dressed up in robes and they have a government and wars and all kinds of stuff, but who knows? Definitely sci-fi heavy episode. Makes you want to go and watch some sci-fi stuff. Hey, if you're into watching cool stuff, I recommend Tubi TV. It's free. You gotta watch some corny, weird ads, but you can definitely find some really interesting stuff there, especially if you like sci-fi. Me, I'm into weird classics every now and then. I'll find a weird classic film or just an old film that no one's ever seen before and check it out on Tubi. But oh, cool. Speaking of Bigfoot, Tony Merkel, friend of the show, the Confessionals podcast, just put out a new episode, The Bigfoot Summoner. Damn. TikTok Terrence, the Bigfoot Summoner. Pretty cool stuff. Anyways, what an episode with Mike. A lot going on this week, folks. I just had a fun conversation with the boys on Illuminati Confirmed. Stay tuned for that. That'll be coming real soon. And of course, we're going to do an extended outro. If you're listening to this early release on Patreon, you might not get the extended outro because I haven't recorded it yet. This is an early release, okay? But if you're listening to this on the free RSS feed, please go over to the Patreon, support the show, and help us out. Keep the show going, help pay for all the cool things that go into creating a show like this, like the electricity bill, and the Wi-Fi bill, and the Zoom bill, the podcast host. It's just, I can go on and on, folks. You don't need to hear it. All the more reason to support the show. Otherwise, I will be putting my name on Indeed, on LinkedIn, and finding another job. Oh, yeah, who knows? Just kidding. Podcasting for life. And we have grown incredibly. So many awesome folks listening to the show. We just hit 500,000 downloads this past weekend. So really, really proud of that. And onward from here, let's hit 1 million. We're only a couple months away at this rate, and we will have 1 million total downloads. Wow. Fuck with that. 1 million total downloads. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for tuning in. Whether you're hearing an extended outro or not after this, who knows? So I'll just say it. Have a great moment wherever you are in the now. Peace.